ladies, I didn't see you there. Would you guys like to set sail on this ocean of flavor with me? I'll be your captain. I'm Steve Harrington.
And I'm Collin, without Whitney again, who's on vacation in Florida this week and has actually decided to take a break from the podcast until we at least get closer to season 5 anyway. So you're stuck with just little old me for the time being, probably the next 3 or 4 episodes, somewhere in there. We'll see. We'll see when things start happening in Stranger Things land and Whitney wants to come back. But in the meantime, it's just me, and this is Scoops Ahoy, a Stranger Things podcast where we go week by week, chapter by chapter, taking a look at every episode of Stranger Things. We are still in the deep, dark void, waiting for season 5. And this week, we're back with another Influence episode, talking about the fantastic 2011 sci-fi, call it a classic, and the pop culture property that's arguably most similar to and has had the most influence on Stranger Things, J.J. Abrams' Super 8. Before we get to that, though, some big news from Hawkins. I don't know if you guys noticed this week, but apparently filming has now wrapped at not for the whole thing, but wrapped at the school where they film Hawkins High School and middle school, the actual school in Stockbridge, Georgia. They have actually wrapped there. So the buildings are slated to be demolished, torn down, and no more. So hopefully if you wanted to see where it was filmed, you made your way down to Georgia, down to Stockbridge, and saw where it was. I never did, unfortunately. But yeah, they're tearing down the schools. So no more Hawkins High School, no more Hawkins Middle School. I don't know how much longer we have, but I do know it's something, it had been planned for demolition anyway until the Duffers swooped in and said, hey, we could use that. And yeah, so they've finished wrapping everything they needed to shoot at they had wrapped shooting everything they needed to shoot at the schools. So they will be torn down shortly, if not already. I don't know where they are in it. So otherwise, not a whole lot from Stranger Things land going on, hence Whitney not being here. I know I saw a couple pictures of Jamie Campbell Bower shooting with the new girl that they hired to replace Holly. So you guys probably saw that. But yeah, not a whole lot else going on. Maya Hawke, I know, is out in the new movie Inside Out 2. So you guys can catch that if you want to get your little Maya Hawke fix on in the meantime. But yeah, I think that's it for kind of Stranger Things news. So on to Super 8. We're going to start with a summary of what happens. Obviously, spoilers are ahead, but here we go. It is 1979 in the small town of Lillian, Ohio, and young Joe Lamb is mourning the death of his mom, who was killed in a factory accident. His dad, Jack, is the deputy sheriff, and he blames the town drunk Louis Daynard, since Joe's mom was covering his shift when she was killed. Fast forward a few months and school's out for summer, giving Joe and his buddy Charles time to finish working on a Super 8 film they're making about zombies. Charles is the director, and their friends Martin, Carrie, and Preston are helping out. Alice Daynard, who is Louis's daughter, is brought on to play the female lead. They head to the local depot to film one night and luck out when a train approaches. That is, until they notice a pickup truck ram the train head on, causing a massive, perhaps too massive, train derailment. I'll actually post a link in the socials. There's a great article on how they filmed it all, kind of a behind-the-scenes cinematography article about how they filmed it and how they put it all together. So I will post a link to that in the socials. You can see that. Anyway, when the dust settles, the kids notice the truck was driven by their teacher, Mr. Woodward, who tells them to run away and not say anything to anyone about anything. The kids then notice soldiers already on the scene, and they drive away in a panic. The next day, the town's going crazy. Dogs are disappearing, the power's all wonky, and several people have vanished, including the sheriff, which means Joe's dad, Jack, is now in charge. He meets with Colonel Nellick, who is vague at best. The kids get their film developed from that night, meanwhile, and notice an alien creature crawling out of the train wreckage. Across town, the alien actually takes Alice. Eventually, the military starts a fire outside of town, forcing everyone to evacuate. Deputy Jack is arrested, and the kids go to the school to look through Mr. Woodward's old research, hoping to find a way to rescue Alice. They do find some old films and documents that prove an alien landed on Earth and was being held by the military and was being transported by train to Ohio at the time of the crash. Joe and Carrie figure out where the alien might be living and drop down into a big old hole in the ground and find Alice and a few others being held there. They escape, but not before Joe and E.T. have a little chat and come to an understanding that it's time for the guy to fix his spaceship and go home. So the alien does just that, puts the ship together and flies off. Here ends Super 8. So the movie itself came out in June 10th of 2011. on June 10th, 2011. It was written and directed, as I mentioned, by J.J. Abrams, produced by Steven Spielberg, which is obvious to anybody who's seen it. The cast included Joel Courtney as Joe Lamb, Riley Griffiths as Charles Krasnick, Ryan Lee as Carrie McCarthy, Gabrielle Basso as Martin Reed, and Zach Mills as Preston Scott. Those are the five boys that are making the movie. And then Elle Fanning is Alice Daynard. And for the adults, Kyle Chandler is Deputy Jack Lamb, and Ron Eldard is Louis Daynard. The movie was made on a $50 million budget, had a $35 million opening weekend, which is not too shabby. It was number one for the weekend. Went on to make $127 million total in the United States and was the number 18 movie for the year. So not great as far as box office numbers go. And really hasn't gotten a whole lot of buzz since then. It's not one of these things that has become kind of a cult classic that people watch. It's just kind of, it was there and did okay and has just been kind of forgotten. But hopefully more and more people discover it and recognize it. It's just a great science fiction movie and very similar to Stranger Things. The other films in the top five for that opening weekend of Super 8, just for some perspective, the number 2 movie that weekend was X-Men First Class in its second week. The Hangover Part 2 was the third movie in its third week. Number 4 was Kung Fu Panda 2 in its third week. And the fifth biggest movie that weekend was Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides in its fourth week. So I will post a link to this also on our socials. The studio did Paramount did I'm assuming it's them anyway, did a really neat kind of casting behind the scenes. It's a good like 10 or 15 minute long kind of vignette that's up on YouTube. So you guys can check that out. It's really funny. They're really fun. They kind of talk about how they brought all these unknown kids on, and they get into a little bit on, filming the train crash and all that kind of stuff. So it's really interesting. And I'll post a link to that so you guys can check that out on YouTube. Awards wise, no major awards, no Golden Globes or Oscar nominations or anything like that for Super 8, but it did do pretty well in like kind of the niche-y, sci-fi festivals and award shows. At the 2012 Saturn Awards, which are for sci-fi, fantasy, and horror, it actually won 3 awards for Best Performance by a Young Actor for Joel Courtney, who played Joe, Best Director for J.J. Abrams, and then Best Music for Michael Giacchino for the score for Super 8. And then it also got nominations for Elle Fanning for Best Performance by a Young Actor, and nominations also for Best Science Fiction Film. It actually lost out to Rise of the Planet of the Apes. And then nominations for writing, editing, and special effects, and didn't win any of those. As with most J.J. Abrams films, you think about things like Cloverfield, which he produced back in 2008, and the Star Trek movies, the kind of the Star Trek reboots he did, and a bunch of other things like that. And then even like TV shows he did. A lot of the build up to the actual release of the thing is all about creating buzz, and it's usually, involving Easter eggs and that kind of stuff. And, it's more than just your normal marketing ploy that studios put together. And a big part of that for Super 8 was this teaser trailer that they put together. And I'll post a link to that on our socials too. I was actually going to play a clip during the podcast, but it's all kind of just sound effects and words on the screen. So it wouldn't really have meant anything. But it was really interesting how they did it, because they originally filmed the whole train crash sequence first solely so they could take clips of it and put it in this teaser trailer. So when you actually do see this teaser, and it's not the full trailer later on includes the kids and tells you more about the story, but the original, I think it's like a minute long teaser trailer, is basically just Mr. Woodward's truck driving onto the tracks, the crane crashing, and then the aftermath, and there's words about aliens and all that kind of stuff. But it's really kind of mysterious, kind of, gets you curious as to about what this whole movie's all about. And again, never mentions kids or making a Super 8 movie or anything like that. So it's really, really interesting how they put it all together, and that's why they filmed the whole train crash sequence first and out of order. So that was really kind of interesting. As far as reviews and reception, for Super 8, it's currently at 81% on Rotten Tomatoes among critics, 75% for an audience score. I pulled a couple movie reviews from some well-known critics. Leonard Maltin, in his review, said Abrams has soaked up popular culture like a sponge, and while he naturally calls on tropes from movies and television shows he's seen, he is also a skillful storyteller who knows how to layer action and thrills onto a bedrock of emotional truth. And that's what makes Super 8 so satisfying. And then Peter Travers, who was with Rolling Stone at the time, gave the film 3 stars and said, Super 8 kicks in where it counts. Pulses will pound and palms will sweat, but nothing works without a human connection. The monster that ate Manhattan in Cloverfield, which Abrams produced in 2008, lacked a soul. In Super 8, Abrams makes us care. This movie, a true beauty, will put a spell on you. And then I actually went back at the time when this came out. I was actually working kind of part-time and freelance as a movie critic, and I wrote my own review of Super 8 at the time and actually gave it 5 stars and said at the time, it would be easy to call Super 8 a mashup of Stand By Me, The Goonies, E.T., and Close Encounters. It was obviously inspired by all those and many others, but it's much more a completely compelling movie in its own right. It's jam-packed with high tension while also giving ample time to quieter, more human moments. Back in 1983, some friends and I grabbed my dad's Super 8 camera and filmed a spoof of Michael Jackson's Thriller, which we actually did. It's really fun. The finished film has long since disappeared, much to my dismay, but the memories and the experience haven't. While I obviously won't pretend to share Abrams and Spielberg's history or prowess, I can certainly appreciate the wide-eyed fascination that comes with creating something and recording it on film. It's because they never lost that feeling either that Super 8 has emerged as the first truly must-see movie of the year. So that was my review back in 2011. So that does it for kind of the background of Super 8. So let's get into the whole comparison and everything with Stranger Things. I'm going to start. I'll play a clip from this. I don't know if you guys have already heard this. I'm sure some of you guys have tripped on it at one point or another. But back in July of 2022, right after season 4, the last 2 chapters of season 4 launched, right at the beginning of July, the Duffers were on the Happy, Sad, Confused podcast with Josh Horowitz, and they were talking about kind of the influences and, you know, how they originally came up with the whole idea of Stranger Things in the first place and what went into it and that kind of thing.
I mean, I get that when people say, it's just a big love letter homage to these films, but really it was an homage, more us trying to recapture that style of storytelling or that storytelling sensibility that seemed to have kind of gone out of fashion. And then we moved into 2000s. I love Chris Nolan, but everything became like very dark and real and grounded. And so, you know, we wanted to bring back that sort of a little bit more, it's sincere and you know, not ironic, sincere,
right.
Adventure, family storytelling that just seems to have gone, you know, with the exception of Super 8, nobody was doing. And the Super 8 was kind of a one-off. We loved Super 8. I loved Super 8, but then it was gone. I mean, there was no other Super 8. There was no Super 9, you know, and then, and no one else did it. No one else did it. And I was like, I do think there's an appetite for this, or that's why I hoped for this type of storytelling. So that really more than anything is what it is. It's still like trying to stay in that zone.
Yeah, so that was actually Matt talking about, you know, how, you know, what kind of drove him and obviously relying so much on Super 8 and the whole storytelling sensibility of Super 8 and, you know, how it all came together and how it played into Stranger Things. So I went through and I looked at my notes after watching Super 8 and kind of put together a top 5 list of how I think Super 8 influenced Stranger Things. So I'm going to start with number 5, and that was just kind of the whole general role of nostalgia, which is obviously so prevalent in Stranger Things, you know, being set in 1983, 4, 5, 6. And then obviously in very early 1979 and into the summer of 1979 in Super 8. So just the period music they play, you know, the stuff on the radio that the kids are listening to, the vintage costumes, set decoration, including things like the movie posters in Charles's room. I got a poster for Halloween, I think, and there's a poster for I think it was Day of the Dead or Evil Dead. I can't remember which one of the, but I know there's a Halloween poster in there. And then in the Kaznick's kitchen, I don't know if you guys noticed the like olive green appliances like the stove and, you know, that kind of stuff. Also a lot of the props, very, you know, time specific and, you know, that kind of thing. Walkmans, the walkie-talkies, And then even, drawing parallels, between those and Stranger Things, but, even they even had the moment, when the kids were in the cave at the end with the alien and the Zippo lighter isn't working, just like when Hopper had it at the Russian prison, the one time you want your Zippo lighter to work and it's not working. So there were just so many little things, that, kind of played into, joining Super 8 and Stranger Things. So that was my number 5, just kind of the whole role of nostalgia and props and set decoration and all that kind of stuff. Number 4, the idea of using firecrackers to fight the monster. Obviously, in Super 8, Carrie, was a bit of a pyromaniac. Used the firecrackers to distract the monster so they could get out of the cave, and then obviously, Lucas was all gung ho to get the firecrackers to fight the monster in the Starcourt Mall. Number 3 was having a bus scene. And actually number 4 and number 3 were the two things that the Duffers pointed to specifically. I'll play that clip in a second. The firecrackers, and then having the scene on the bus where the monster, the kids are in the bus and the monster is attacking, just like in the junkyard with, Steve and Max and everybody in season 2 when the demo dogs are coming into the bus. So here is actually the Duffers talking about, and this is from the clips that we use all the time, talking about in the influence episodes, about how, a particular movie influenced it. This is separate from the podcast. This was, their YouTube video. So this is the Duffers talking about those two items and, how they and Super 8 influenced Stranger Things.
Super 8. So a lot like our show, it was paying homage and trying to capture the spirit of these films that we grew up loving.
We have a scene in season 2, episode 6, I believe, when they're in the kids are hiding in the bus and the demo dogs are attacking it, which is similar to a scene in Super 8 when they're also hiding the bus from the giant monsters coming from them.
And one of the boys in Super 8 uses firecrackers to fight the monster without giving away too much. The kids may or may not employ fireworks to their advantage in season 3.
Yeah, they may or may not. We'll have to wait till season 3 comes out. And yes, obviously fireworks played a huge role in the Battle of Starcourt Mall. So number 2 comparison that I drew was the nature of the monster itself as being something that becomes part of the person who it, either captures or gets near or whatever. I think back at the beginning, Woodward was saying he's in me, the monster is in me. And then Alice, at the end of the movie was saying, when she was talking to the kids, she said, it's the monster is terrified and exhausted. And when it touched me, I knew. So this whole idea that kind of the monster can kind of, infect you and kind of read your emotions and influence your own emotions and make you feel things and that kind of thing, which is obviously very similar to, or identical to, Will Byers and what he's going through throughout the entire length of Stranger Things. So that seemed like a pretty obvious connection. Before we get to number 1, some other little bonus Super 8 things. I love the bit at the beginning when Charles yells to his mom, "Go, Mom, I'm coming," which is just exactly like, Mike, mouthing back at Karen when she wants him to, come upstairs or get off the phone or, stop playing games and that kind of stuff. I also like the scene kind of toward the beginning where the kids were all chatting at the funeral and they were all huddled around the food table and kind of cracking jokes about it, which was kind of like the Flea and the Acrobat chapter when Dustin and Lucas are sitting around, talking about Nilla wafers and stuff before they meet up with Mr. Clark. There was also about halfway through Super 8, there was an overhead shot of the town and all you can see is the town. And then in the distance, you hear the monster growl, which is straight, copied again in Stranger Things. How many times did we, just see faraway shots of, the mall or the lab or whatever, and all you hear is the monster yelling or the demo dogs, growling or whatever. So obviously both Super 8 and Stranger Things have this mysterious military element, kind of military / lab scientist kind of idea. And of course you toss in flamethrowers. We have flamethrowers in both, the show and the movie. The great scene, one of the quieter scenes in Super 8 when Alice comes home and is sneaking in after she had been meeting with Joe, and Lewis is sitting there waiting up for her. Reminded me a lot of the scene when Nancy comes home. She sneaks in after her night with Steve, and Karen is sitting up waiting for her. There's obviously a lot of other little things, the use of a ham radio, there's a frantic town meeting where the whole town gets together and is up in arms, and the curfew and all that kind of stuff. And then one neat little thing, I don't know if any of you guys caught this, but the guy who played Axel, who was one of the gang guys in the Callie storyline in the Lost Sister episode, he was the one with the Mohawk. He plays Deputy Tally in Super 8. So he's the one in the scene where Joe comes home and all the police are sitting around the dining room table in Joe's house. And Joe's dad says, I left some pizza for you in the fridge. And then one of the deputies pipes up and says, oh, actually, I ate it. That's the same actor who played Axel in the Lost Sister episode. And then he actually has a scene later on when they're at the police station. He's the one that comes in and shows Jack the map of where all the missing dogs are. So if you missed that, go back and look at it. It's kind of fun to see, a very obvious parallel between Super 8 and Stranger Things, because it's the same actor. So, and then finally, the number one, connection that I drew is just so obvious, and that's just the general plot. We have a period piece about a group of middle school boys and a girl who band together to fight the military and an unknown alien creature in a small Midwestern town. So I mean, it's both Stranger Things and Super 8. It's a very obvious comparison. So kind of a no-brainer, but I really, really love Super 8, obviously, and obviously really, really, really love Stranger Things. And I had actually forgotten about Super 8 until about a year ago. I don't know what made me watch it again. But at the time I was just like, holy crap, it's just like Stranger Things in movie form. So obviously I think Stranger Things did it a little bit better. I think the Duffers kind of took Super 8 and a bunch of other things and kind of massaged them a little bit, pulled out some of the better points, got rid of some of the worst points, and, made it into something new and fresh, and really enjoyable. And obviously they had more time, with more episodes and, more chapters to, lengthen the story out a little bit and have a lot more fun with it and give it a lot more depth and characters and everything like that. But I mean, the parallels just on the basic plot between the two is, they're almost mirror images of each other. So I think that's about it for Super 8 discussion. So let's get into some emails. We've got a couple of those to go through, starting with our long lost friend, Doug, who I haven't heard from in, I'm going to say months. Says, hi, Whitney and Collin. God, I feel like I haven't participated in so long. Yeah, I agree, Doug. But I've been listening all along, he says. Missed the season 3 top episodes vote. No matter. It's The Bite and the Battle of Starcourt. Overall, I feel season 3 is just generally underappreciated, and I think it's super fun, and the final 2 episodes are just a thrill. My third choice, whatever. The Bite and the Battle of Starcourt really hit some notes where they go beyond the derivative nostalgia and really make their mark as something original. Particularly Robin and Steve when they're high, and Dustin singing the never-ending story. These moments are things I've never, ever seen before in a framework that I've seen 100 times. Now, on to Super 8. Not so much, Doug says. At your recommendation, I watched it with my daughters. I liked it. I really did. Kinda. But it did not seem new. It seemed like J.J. Abrams trying to replicate a Steven Spielberg movie. Sure. Well, younger daughter loved it. Older daughter totally checked out. After thinking about it, I guess at least for me, seeing movies like this only works if you're the right age or you're rewatching it later in life after you saw it at the right age. But clearly the influence on Stranger Things was immense. I was really surprised by how much was actually a blatant ripoff. Most notable was the presence of the alien compared to the Demogorgon. No need to go on and on. I think my final takeaway was, I am more impressed now with Stranger Things because Super 8 made me realize that tapping the nostalgia only takes you so far. I think the Duffers realized that they need to do something different and original with that nostalgia. Okay, thanks guys. Doug in Buffalo. Thanks, Doug, for writing in. Glad to have you back. Hope to hear from you in the coming months. Next email is from Elizabeth. Dear Whitney and Collin and Scoops Ahoy fam, greetings from the Midwest. It's June and the cicadas are here. My name is Elizabeth and my daughter Olivia and I are obsessed with Stranger Things. I would like to thank you all for keeping me entertained on my 45-minute work commute. I took a break from my normal true crime podcast when I needed a little Stranger Things to fill the gap from my last rewatch. We live in the Chicago suburbs and are a little late to Stranger Things. Olivia binged them all about 2 years ago when the 4th season came out. I was worried that it may be a little scary for her because she was 12 at the time, but she ended up watching most of it by herself in our basement, and I caught up when she was watching the last season, and I was hooked. So I just finished binging all your pods, and I'm now waiting in the deep, dark void with everyone else. I'm a 70s baby, in between the two of you, Collin and Whitney, born in 1974. And let me just tell you, the nostalgia the Duffers bring to the show is unbelievable. I was literally transported to my childhood. The colors, the music, the hair, everything is so true to the time period. There is a scene, I think from the first season, where one of the families is sitting around a table and there are those green textured drinking glasses. And when I saw them, I literally stood up and said, we had those. So now here's my 2 cents about Super 8. Overall, I thought it was enjoyable. I do appreciate J.J. Abrams. His Star Trek reboot is a favorite of mine. It did not hold my 14-year-old's attention, though, despite the kid's point of view in the film. There were some definite parallels to Stranger Things, the time period, kid's perspective, the father policeman who can't express his feelings, a monster on the loose, to name a few. I really enjoyed the kid's performance and their subplot with the zombie film. I also enjoyed Kyle Chandler's performance as the father. The part where he distracts the military personnel and absconds with the Jeep reminds me of Indiana Jones. As the movie unraveled, I was really hoping it would continue with the jump scares like the one when the chief of police gets taken at the gas station. However, the plot in between the action was a little slow. I can see that. There were several loose threads that I wish also would have been resolved, like why did all the dogs run away? It appeared like they were just returned after they were found scattered across the county. And why did the military evacuate the town only to immediately start blowing it up with tanks while there were still civilians in town? I guess they were really just convinced they would kill the alien that way. And I think that is what they were doing. They wanted to get everybody out of the town so they could focus on killing the alien, so they could get everybody out of the town and then open fire. So I think that's kind of how I took it. I did appreciate, Elizabeth says, how the story ended with the misunderstood alien getting to go home. Again, I felt it was entertaining. I felt the effort was made for the 80s nostalgia, but certainly not as fantastic as Stranger Things. No, is anything as fantastic as Stranger Things? No. Hence the podcast. We are looking forward to more Scoops Ahoy and teasers for season 5. Oh, and before I forget, sorry, Whitney, I grew up in Tampa, Florida, and we definitely played TV tag and maybe even toilet tag. So one more vote for me. Until next time, Elizabeth. Thank you, Elizabeth, for writing in. I appreciate it. Next email is from Harry, our old friend. Hello, Whitney and Collin and all the Scoopers at sea. I liked Super 8 more on the rewatch than I did the first time. It still had the same issues, but I almost always like things more the second time I watched. To confine my comments on the film to subjects related to Stranger Things, 1. The creature design of the alien reinforces the excellence behind the Duffers' designs of the Demogorgon, Mind Flayer, and other creatures. The Super 8 alien has that creepy insect thing going for it, but it's not above and beyond like the Stranger Things monsters. 2, I keep seeing people online talking about which Stranger Things characters will die or will be trapped forever in the Upside Down, and this movie makes it clear what a terrible idea that would be. No one wants that pain. No one wants to go out on a soul-rending sorrow. Even more now, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think so either, Harry. So we're in agreement. And number 3, he says, bad things happen, but you can still live. That's what Joe says to the monster at the end, prompting the alien's face turn, and I expect to see something similar in season 5. Each season, except the first, has shown characters throwing off Henry's mental domination through the power of love, and I think that's going to happen in the final climax of the show, whether it frees the Mind Flayer from Henry, or Henry from the Mind Flayer, or the army of Demogorgons from either of them. I'm predicting that will play a huge role in victory for our heroes. Best wishes, Harry in Seattle. P.S. Bad things happen, like strikes and pandemics, but you can still watch your favorite shows if you live long enough. Favorite shows like Stranger Things. Yeah, actually, Harry, I'm going to go back to your point. I was thinking that actually before I even got your email, you know, and I think it was because I had just watched Super 8, that, yeah, I could totally see a moment where, you know, Elle or someone or all of them have to kind of break through and get through to Henry, you know, or VH1, whatever you want to get back to Henry 1, however you want to refer to him, and kind of break him out of that, you know, kind of make him realize, you know, that, love will win the day or kindness will win the day or something like that. I know it sounds cheesy how I'm putting it, but I think you understand what I'm getting at. Kind of the, you know, freeing him from the pain of what he's been going through, that kind of thing. I was thinking that might actually be something that happens. So I can hear and see Whitney rolling her eyes all the way from here, because I'm sure that she doesn't think that's going to happen. And she may actually issue a because of that, but I think it's something that might actually happen. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But yeah, I don't think you're far off, Harry. I like that idea. Okay, next email is from Avalon. Hello, Collin, Whitney, and other Scoopers. My name is Avalon, and this is my first time emailing in. I'll let you guys guess how to pronounce my name, although most people say it correctly. Sometimes it gets messed up. I'm going to go with Avalon. So we'll try that, and you can let me know if I got it right or wrong. I've been listening to the podcast for 2 years now and only just got caught up. I get busy during the school year, so I do most of my listening during summer break. I'm 14 years old, live in Colorado, and have never heard of TV Tag. So take that notch from me and throw it right out the window. My favorite movie is The Breakfast Club, followed by Titanic, two classics. I do theater, so I'm sure that'll be featured in future emails of mine. One more thing before we get to Super 8. A song I would love to hear in Stranger Things Season 5 is Dream Suite in C Major by Miracle Musical. It was released in 2012, so there isn't a chance it'll be in Season 5, but I think the lyrics and the apocalyptic vibe fit the events in Hawkins perfectly. And I'll post a link to that on our socials too. Now, for Super 8, says Avalon, I really enjoyed the movie. The Stranger Things vibes were strong. I took notes throughout the movie about the similarities between the two and came up with a list of 27. And mine was about a page and a half, so I didn't count, but it was probably somewhere in that neighborhood. I don't think some of them count, though, such as there are Russians mentioned, and a child drives a car. But I'll list some off. Joe reminds me of Mike, and Alice reminds me of Elle. Charles reminds me of the Duffers' original description for Dustin in the Montauk pilot. It also reminds me of the Montauk Pilot Show Bible because it deals with electromagnetic fields and magnetization. Joe and Charles arguing about Alice is like Dustin and Lucas arguing about Max in season 2. Absolutely. Also, the most obvious one, the alien creature, looks a little like the Mind Flayer. Yeah, kind of the Mind Flayer actually. Towards the end, he looks more like the Mind Flayer, but when the first time we see him, when he's like at was it the gas station or something like that? He kind of had more of a Demogorgon look. But yeah, I totally get what you're saying. I do have a big question, though. At the very end, why did only Joe's necklace get sucked up? In the next shot, everyone else has necklaces and theirs don't move. I don't know. Chalk it up to who knows what. It was actually kind of funny. I went on to IMDb. I was looking for something else in the goofs and trivia section for Super 8. And one of the somebody wrote in the IMDb goof section about this actually and said, we don't understand what forces of nature the alien is harnessing to achieve the ship morphing. So we shouldn't pretend we understand how he attracts the metal or even how he selects what gets attracted. So yeah, kind of, alien creature sci-fi, make your own rules. So I think you just kind of write it off and go on about your day. I'm assuming Avalon. So, but yeah, it was a good point actually. To be honest, she says, Super 8 reminds me more of It than Stranger Things. Overall, I love the movie, weird alien and all. Okay, that's all I have this month. See you guys next time. Avalon. Okay, so that does it for Super 8 emails. Got a couple other last little emails to get to. First one is from Indy. Hello, Munsons. I'm Indy. I'm 11 years old, 12 in October. I know this may be very random for the episode you're doing, but I have seen some things about Eddie still being alive. Well, actually, we can address that first because in the same Happy, Sad, Confused podcast with Josh Horowitz and the Duffers, that was one of the very first questions that Josh asked the Duffers.
Yeah. Eddie Munson officially dead?
Yes.
Sadly, yeah.
Breaks my heart. What a performance from Joe Quinn. Amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, officially dead according to the Duffers. Now, obviously they could certainly change their mind, I'm sure, but that was right after it came out, and I'm sure they knew exactly where they were going and what they were doing. So yeah, I'm sorry to Indy and everyone else that I don't think we're seeing Eddie anytime soon, unless you want to go back and rewatch season 4, which is good. But yeah, he will not be around in season 5. And then Indy goes, it was also shocking in that Argyle is not part of season 5. Personally, I think Argyle had a lot of potential. I do too, actually. Lots of love, a fellow Steve Harrington lover. Next email is from our old pal Harriet in Australia. Hi, Collin and Whitney. I'm so sorry I've not emailed in a while. Exams and sport have been kicking my head around like a football with some injuries. We don't talk about my maths, but I'm now on my semester break and writing this on my rowing camp. I'm very excited, although it's 5 days and 0-degree weather on the water, so it has its cons. I have not been able to watch the movie this week. I apologize, but it's definitely on my list. It looks really cool from the trailer and clips I've watched. I've been catching up on some other media recently, including the Teacher's Pet podcast about the murder of Lynette Dawson by her husband, Chris. And she puts in parentheses, and I fully believe he did it. It's too sketch. It's very good. I would recommend it. I've also been watching Bridgerton. It's amazingly entertaining after a long day to take my mind back to Regency London. And yes, Whitney, Harriet says, I'm closing my eyes around those bits. So I remain unsullied, she says. But the spinoff made me cry proper tears. Think Eddie and Max's death tears. That's all I got. Love, Harriet. And then our final email is from Henry. Hey guys, I just wanted to email in and tell you all something very exciting, and you probably won't believe me, but it's true. On Saturday, May 25th, I went to see The First Shadow. It was a truly surreal experience, and the use of projections and bubbles to become the particles was so cool. I'm not going to go in depth about it because I know some people don't like spoilers, but I would highly recommend it. It was a late birthday present. And then he says, I also have COVID now, so that gives me days off from school. Bye, guys, from Henry. So thank you, Henry, for writing in. Then all the other new people that wrote in, Indy and Avalon and Elizabeth, and obviously our old pals, Harry and Doug and Harriet. Good to hear from all of you guys as well. So that does it for this week. I will be back on July 18th with another top 5 episode. This time we're going to talk about the best scenes from all of Stranger Things. Scariest scenes, funniest scenes, whatever. Give us your top 5 list of the scenes you think of every time you think of Stranger Things, or every time someone says, what is this weird show that you like? Why should I watch it? What are the scenes that get you going, that are the first thing you think of when you think of Stranger Things, the first scene that you go to when you're doing a rewatch? Any moments or scenes or strange happenings that have stuck with you through all 4 seasons. So put your list together. We're calling it top 5, but I don't care. Put as many as you want. Do 1, do 10, doesn't matter to me. Send us your emails by Sunday, July 14th. The episode will air on Thursday, July 18th. And again, anything goes. I want to know what you guys remember or what you guys think of first when you think of Stranger Things. So remember, if you want to get in touch with us, you can email scoopsahoypod@gmail.com. Hit us up on our socials. We're at Scoops Ahoy Pod on Twitter and Facebook. And we're also on Discord, so you can find us there. That does it for this week. I want to thank everyone for listening and hope you tune in next time. Thanks, guys. Bye. Stranger Things audio clips and official score are the property of Netflix. Incidental music by Blue Mount Score from Pixabay.